One. Hello back again, Mama Bears. I'm Hillary with Mama Bear Apologetics, and with me is
Elizabeth Urbanowitz from Foundation Worldview.
Amy Davison, also from Mama.
From Mama Bear.
So today is Worldview Wednesday. Were y'all did y'all hear people cutting in and out on that? Okay, good. Well, I'll just roll with it then. So today on Worldview Wednesday, we are going to have one of Elizabeth's amazing books that she has just such a panoply of books. There we go. Falling for Rapunzel from back when she was an elementary school kid, or elementary school teacher. So Elizabeth, tell us about Falling for Rapunzel. It sounds fabulous.
Yes. I'm not sure if this was published when I was in elementary school, but if it was published back then, I would have loved it. So Falling for Rapunzel is just a really fun book. It's like a fun twist on a fairy tale where the prince comes and he hears Rapunzel. She's upset that her hair is messed up. And so he hears her whining and he thinks that she's like crying to be rescued. So he keeps asking her to like throw down her hair, and she keeps hearing him incorrectly. So like when he says, throw down your hair, she'll throw down her underwear. And then he tries to clarify. And he's like, no,
always a bad idea. Girls, always a bad idea.
Don't throw your underwear in people's heads. Just a bad idea. But then he asks for like your silky tresses, and she sends down her silky dresses. And then he asks for a rope, and she sends down a cantaloupe. So it's just kind of like a funny, fun twist on a fairy tale. So like the princess aspect will speak to girls, like just some of the humor will hopefully speak to boys. Yeah. But just a great book, a really quick read that's really fun, but you can talk about some really important things. Like we're going to talk about how you can ask really good questions, just to talk about the concept of love, and then also positive communication.
Yes. And effective communication, because there's ineffective communication going on in this.
That's one thing that I thought was so cute about the story is how it presented the guy, because and I see it with my boys, and I'm sure anyone who has boys in their family, communication really isn't their strong point. Like if they don't get it across the first time, you're usually going to have, like it usually comes to blows. I mean, that's just how it goes. And so what I really liked about the story, and fun note, Elizabeth reads us the stories before every video, so it's great. We get to have story time. But one thing I loved is he was so persistent in trying to explain himself and to be understood. And especially seeing a boy like that is really great for my guys, because then I can help encourage, okay, instead of decking your brother, what words could you have said, to help get your point across or to help understand a little better. So I really like that.
Yeah, that persistency, real world connection for me. My youngest couldn't hear very well at all, actually, when she was about 1. And we didn't discover that until she was almost 2. So not being able to really hear all the sounds, it took her a long time to be able to speak to where we could understand her. And so initially when she started speaking, we had no clue. She would say, like, I don't know what she's saying. And we'd ask her to repeat it. And she would, at first she would get really frustrated, but then she realized, like, what can I do? That this is a 3-year-old trying to figure out how she can communicate with us so that we understand her. So she started pointing to things and using gesticulations to really help us understand. That was a big SAT word.
That was awesome.
Help us understand what she needed and what she wanted. So that was her way of really loving us so that we could understand her. And I think as an adult, sometimes we forget our kids sometimes have no clue what we're talking about and might misunderstand what it is they need or what it is they're trying to say, especially when their emotions are getting in the way and they can't accurately tell us what it is they're feeling. And so being able to understand that maybe we're missing it and gently asking them questions. What is it that you're feeling? And how can I help you in this moment? It's really this lesson that the prince didn't quite get until the maid landed on his head, like, oh, well, guess I'm done with Rapunzel. Rapunzel, opens the door at the end and she's like, why didn't they just knock? Really, woman? Trying to find that, connection in the easiest way possible without getting angry is the lesson I learned from this book.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think especially in this season of quarantine, where we are stuck in our homes, like just with our immediate family, and there can be, miscommunications. We've been talking a lot about love this week, and to just know that positive and effective communication can really be loving towards those who are with us. And so one thing I used to do in my classroom with my students, just because so often, we are so quick to speak rather than being quick to listen, and listening well, and we need to be trained to do. So something I would do is I would pair my students up, and I would give each pair either like a tennis ball or a beach ball or something that they couldn't really hurt each other with, but could still be fun. And I'd have them, I'd have them sit on opposite ends of the room, and I'd have one of them say something. They would say a sentence, and then they would pass the ball to the other after they had said the sentence. And then the other one would catch the ball and would say, what I heard you say was, and then they would say in their own words what they had heard that person communicate. And then they would ask, is that correct? And they would toss the ball back to the other person. And if that person said, yes, you heard me correctly, then they'd say, okay, they'd pass the ball back and say, okay, you say something to me. And it would go back and forth. Or if that person was like, no, you heard me completely incorrectly, that person would then try to rephrase what they said, toss the ball back to the second student, and the second student would again try to paraphrase. But just to even start thinking about, sometimes, like what I hear might not be actually what that person was trying to communicate. So just anything that we can do to just help foster, positive communication, active listening, and loving others through the way we communicate.
Shoot, I'm going to do this with my husband. There's sometimes where it feels like we're talking and I'm like, is he hearing what I'm saying? And so, okay, we're going to sit down with the ball now. And this is what I say. It tells you, it's like this physical manifestation of who's kind of got the floor at the moment. I'm saying something, now you're going to have to interpret what I'm saying and then respond to what I'm saying. And then I have to say, did I hear your response correctly? Because I don't know, sometimes, when you're in the heat of the moment, you almost need something physical like that to slow down so that you're purposefully listening, you're purposefully interpreting, and you're purposely responding in an appropriate way. If I think it's good, I think we should do it with the kids. Be like, y'all need me to get the ball out. Y'all aren't communicating very well. But not the worst idea in the world.
No, not at all. And it's funny because it reminds me so much of Greg Koukল's tactics. That's the first step in any sort of even apologetic engagement, is you want to make sure that you're hearing the other person correctly and that you're understanding them, so that you're not making these straw man arguments or you're jumping to conclusions or that sort of thing. And so just even to tie it in there, it's that great first step, so that way they feel appreciated and understood, and that you're willing to put forth that effort and in loving them. And so that way you can understand them better.
Yeah, recognizing that we can change our tactic to help improve the communication, instead of relying on them and blaming them, like, oh, well, they didn't say that right. Well, maybe we didn't hear them right. Recognizing our role in the conversation.
Dennis Prager has a phrase that I love, that he says, clarity over agreement. So it's like, he's made his life, he makes his living off of talking with people who disagree with him. And so but he would prefer for there to be clarity between the two parties than for them to have agreement. Because sometimes clarity is the only thing you can ask for, especially when you already know you're going to disagree. So clarity over agreement. This is one of those simple little tasks, simple little, exercises that you can do to where you can get that clarity, because sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Yeah. So that is our Worldview Wednesday. So I hope that some of these communication processes were helpful. And as always, send us a picture with the hashtag Worldview Wednesday if you find your kids, starting to get a little emotional and you're like, okay, we're going to talk it out with the ball, but a non-hurting kind of ball.
Yes.
And you
can might get chucked at their head.
You can start that training in a non-emotional time when you're not emotional and get that practice in. It will probably be much better received if you start the training then.
Or they'll chuck the ball right at your
face. Here, talk to yourself.
I feel so much better, Mom.
Okay. Well, we will see you tomorrow for Theology Thursday.
Bye. Bye.